January ends with a couple big games, but February is rocking, leaving up to gaming to release more huge games in the shortest month. But here we are. Many of these I'm reviewing currently or have previews up, so make sure to subscribe to see exclusive coverage for Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, Avowed, Monster Hunter, Sniper Elite Resistance, and many more day and date, or even some of them early. Some on this list and some not. Let's begin. Big games coming up for February. First off, and I have to lead this with one that we most all know about, Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 on February 14th. For pretty much everything. We're almost here. Kingdom Come years ago delivered a dirt and blood simulator, an immersive sim where you got to see just what it would be like being a no one and then climbing the ranks of the medieval elite. Only to also still not be one. I'm playing it now for review, but everybody in the world on the 4th will be able to leap into the muddied lederhosen of the loser known as Henry. The developers of Warhorse Studios have doubled down on the scale of the world. The sequel raises the stakes with a game world that is twice as large, but it's not just the size, it's how you use it. And the developers for Kingdom Come 2 have made sure to deliver another immersive sim world, diving into the life of Henry as his story continues across a new location, through a world with dynamic day and night, full weather, NPC schedules where walking around at night without a torch instantly gets you a suspicion rating, and trying to sell bloody clothes to the wife of the guy that you just murdered may get you worse, where reputation follows you and in fact many times precedes you. When you step into the shoes of Henry again, you're going to find a character who's grown pretty spectacularly since the first game, but he's still very familiar. No longer just the blacksmith's son, Henry's matured into a battle-tested warrior and a figure of some significance when it comes to the politics and military chaos. The story picks up directly where the original game left off. Without spoiling too much, it revolves around the continuation of Bohemia's civil war and the looming threat of the Emperor. Along the way, you're going to encounter historical figures, unravel conspiracies, and be forced to make a lot of tough decisions, as well as engage in a ton of tough battles. Combat, when it comes down to it, is getting somewhat of an increase or an upgrade in the sequel. If you remember the first game's emphasis on realism, that same philosophy is carried forward here, but now it's pretty much sharper. The introduction of crossbows and early firearms are also added to give a little bit of complexity to places where it wasn't in the original game. But regardless, if you're up close or you're far away, you have to always watch who you're attacking and where their spaces and openings are. There are some fixes here that I'll talk more about in the review. Now, armor and weapon maintenance remains critical in this game. Neglect your equipment, you're going to find your sword dulling or your armor failing in the heat of battle. But of course, you can sharpen it and get some extra damage there. You also have a ton of skills that change different mechanics within the game world. So this is not only an RPG where you play Henry, but your version of Henry. The mechanics also continue the franchise's commitment to realism when it comes to encountering different characters across the game world and their reactions to you and what you do. You can jump into a battle where perhaps two people are beating up another. You can save the guy one time and then try to help the other bullies beat up him on your next playthrough and see how those different features end up playing out. Even, for example, stealing from a merchant might lead to higher prices in a nearby town as word spreads of that thievery. And I've already had characters that I talked about in the preview podcast where a guard ended up following me halfway across the game world to accost me for what I had stolen and been seen stealing in a completely different town. Dialogue options also adapt based on your reputation, your skills, and all your past actions. If you build a reputation as a merciless warrior, characters are going to fear you. While if you're a very good talker, some of them might let you charm them out of their panties. Additionally, multiple quest outcomes are going to ensure that no two playthroughs at least feel the same. For instance, a side quest can have a ton of parts, one stealth, the other threats, fighting off some bandits, hunting down wolves, and then working through a mystery to find out where the culprit ended up making off to. They're complex and many times multiple part with different ways to finish each section. Almost nothing Henry does or gets done to him or doesn't want done to him isn't complicated. Even in my preview, I mean, shit, it's still a game. Expect crazy antics for your Henry, which means a bevy of bad decisions and a fucking DMV line of hilarious memories and most likely a huge number of random passerby deaths. That just happens. But authenticity is still here, and there are a lot of places where you can dive into this and just see some of the smallest details. Now, Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 is built on an improved, somewhat engine of CryEngine. It offers some detailed, enhanced visuals from the original game. You've still got that dynamic lighting system and time of day, which is a huge deal in this game. Weather effects also contribute to everything, with rain making surfaces slick, mud accumulating on clothes, snow covering the landscapes. changing how you travel, who's traveling, and in what way, as well as, of course, your ability to dial in a crossbow shot on a pack of wolves that thinks an unwashed Henry covered in blood is the same thing as a slice of fish on a hook for a great white. My time spent with the game has had me taking on all kinds of crazy quests. Regardless, really, if you played the original or you're planning on just jumping into this one, it onboards newcomers quite well. It's coming out February 4th. Next up, seriously, what would a month be without a simulator game? Ambulance Life, a paramedic simulator. February 6th for pretty much everything other than Switch. From the same folks who brought you Police Simulator Patrol Officers, now comes Ambulance Life, a paramedic simulator. This is a game that throws you straight into the adrenaline-fueled world of emergency response, or at least the movie versions of it. Your goal is get to the accident sites at breakneck speed, assess the chaos, and deliver life-saving first aid before things go from bad to worse. We all know what that means, probably killing more people on the way to the event than ever saving in one. But as a lover of sim games, I'm all for trying my hand at field tracheotomies and compartmentalizing compartment syndromes versus compound fractures. Each call-out's going to be different. Each patient has their own wild cards, and it's up to you to adapt and improvise and make those split-second decisions that could mean life or death, or a slower death, or less than an excellent future life. Set against the backdrop of some large fake West Coast city, there's a full-blown catastrophe at pretty much any minute. The city is divided into 3 different districts, each with its own vibe, from historic quarters to business districts and gritty industrial zones. So one minute you're going to be dealing with a minor scrape-up in maybe a quiet residential area, and the next you're going to be in the middle of a multi-car pileup in the financial district during rush hours. Every Karen's trying to get an extra latte on their way to a useless yoga class. You're going to weave through traffic. You have to get there, dodge clueless pedestrians, impatient commuters, and the ever-present risk of turning your ambulance into an impromptu wrecking ball. The challenge, of course, is finding the fastest route. I like the idea that they're mixing all of this together. You're not only the driver, but the one who cares for the character, and you have to actually get them back to the hospital in time. Once on site, though, that's where you're going to use all of the items that you have there, piecing together what happened, calming down panic bystanders, and figuring out whether your patient just needs a bandage or a one-way ticket to the emergency room. You have 17 or so medical instruments at your disposal: stethoscopes, blood pressure machines, gas masks, and everything you need to find out if somebody's got a shockable rhythm, or you shock them for no reason, whichever. On scene, you get to perform all kinds of checks and treatments and diagnoses. As they've stated, every patient is going to be unique, which means special surprises like allergies or somebody having an underlying condition that'll turn a routine treatment into something that you have to figure out, because it's a ticking time bomb of bad experiences if you get them the wrong medication or do the wrong thing. It's basically Sherlock Holmes' Crimes and Punishment, the medical version, with you trying to take the clues of what's happened and try to keep humans going. As you gain experience and build your reputation, new districts are going to open up, each more challenging than the last. You got bigger incidents and even tougher calls. With every shift, you unlock new tools and skills that can make the difference between you end up going there and just maybe being able to stabilize a patient, and actually going there and becoming one of the special heroes, like an ER episode. But then there are also catastrophic events. These are moments where everything hits the fan. We're talking your multi-victim accidents, people not paying attention in the snow, and large-scale disasters that are going to push you to the limit. This becomes a place where you triage as you decide who gets treatment first and who has to wait, or not everybody just being saved. It's soccer where there's red and yellow cards, but here they're black cards, which basically means, sorry bud, but heads can't exist without bodies attached. Cannot wait for this one. It's February 4th. I'm super stoked. I love the simulator games, and a lot of these have just been fantastic. And the idea to go to save people and probably kill more people on the way there, well, that just sounds like a blast to me. Next up, and it seems like a blast to me and has been getting very good previews lately, is Avowed. Avowed is coming out February 18th for everything other than the Switch. The same geniuses who brought us The Outer Worlds and Fallout New Vegas are bringing us this one, so expectations are pretty goddamn high. Maybe too high, but who knows. This is set in the same world that was in Pillars of Eternity 1 and 2, which may not help as those are CRPG titles and didn't exactly fly off the shelves. Avowed drops you into the role of an envoy for the Empire. Your mission is to head to the Living Lands, which is a wild, untamed location, to investigate something called the Dream Scourge. Sounds ominous. It's a mysterious plague that spreads chaos, and it's up to you to figure out what's going on and naturally probably save the day. What this includes, though, is a classless system that I like. I've played this already in the preview. You can mix and match abilities to suit your style. If you want to do a dual wield pistols like a swashbuckling rogue, you can do that. You can go sword and shield for a classic knight. You can go for all kinds of different setups. Nothing's really cooler than dual-wielding magic wands like some kind of battle mage straight out of a heavy metal album cover, though. I've really enjoyed my time with that particular style. And you can respec it any time. It is a first-person game. There is a third-person camera, but it is within the options under accessibility. It's unfortunately not a real-time switch. Obsidian has made it clear that they are also not diving into insane romances when it comes to the characters that end up joining you, but instead establishing the side characters as more companions in their own world and driven by their own true senses for fighting, dying, and helping you. I like the idea of them being more autonomous. We'll just have to see how that works out. I've enjoyed my time with the preview. Obsidian also isn't messing around when it comes to creating a place that you want to get lost in. The environments have been fairly richly detailed. They've got giant forests, sun-baked deserts, and verticality is a big deal here as well. So it's not just about walking in a straight line from place to place. There's a lot of climbing, jumping, and scouring all these different places for secrets. The level of detail in the lore is already incredibly high, but the world building seems to be quite layered as well and connected directly to it. And of course, if you've ever played one of their games, you know the stories are probably going to be top-notch as well as the characters. We're just going to have to see when this comes up for a full review. The big problem and big question with Avowed, with its focus on the same world as Pillars of Eternity, which didn't really set the world on fire, and being a smaller hub-based title, is the question, will it grab the attention of gamers in what can only be considered a super slammed February? Sure, Shadows moved out of the same time frame, which gives all games a bit more breathing room, but it's still a lot of games. Avowed as a first-person title in a slightly unique world like this, we'll just have to see if it's good. Not how it does, but if it's actually good, because those two things, not always the same. Something else that is not the same as what it may appear to be at first is Lost Records, February 18th. This game may look exactly like Life is Strange, or at least very close to it, and there's a reason why. It's because these guys made those. I dig those games, I always have. I like Tell Me Why, the original Life is Strange. Those are some of my favorite titles to just sit back and chill with. They've always had excellent soundtracks, awesome nostalgic moments that remind me of Goonies or Stranger Things as loopback machines. Digital time capsules opened by the console start screen and then filtered through by every action I take. This is developed by Don't Nod, the folks behind the original Life is Strange. This adventure takes place between 1995 and the year 2022. It weaves a story that's drenched in a lot of that teen angst and nostalgia, but it also has some intrigue, and from what I've played in the preview, a lot of regret and something that feels like a paranormal Goonies. You step into the size 9 kicks of Swan Holloway, who seems to be a somewhat typical, quirky introvert armed with an arsenal of teenage, faux deep-minded one-liners, and at this time, an old-school camera for both narrative and puzzle-solving purposes. It's a gameplay mechanic that, so far, didn't lean super heavy in the preview, but you do end up going around the game world and capturing memories and using it for puzzle-solving or just recording what's going on. Swan snaps shots of jam sessions in dingy garages, spontaneous deep conversations, and 14-year-olds dropping fart jokes as if they were the first one to hear what cutting the cheese was. Because this is a Don't Nod game, every choice that you make seems to have a chance of having that butterfly effect for it. It was a slow start in the preview, but I did like what I played. As you play as Swan, you meet up with Nora, Autumn, and Kate as they chase Band Glory under this name of their band, Bloom and Rage. Of course, something terrible happens. The game ricochets between that past and whatever's going on in 2022, forcing them all to confront a secret that they seem to have buried. There's a cryptic message that reignites all of these old discussions, and that's what the story's about. But it is still all of those moments, these little tiny emotional ripples that make your experience feel unique without hammering you over the head with "this will be remembered" kind of pop-ups. Games built around nostalgia, though, have become a genre within a genre, offering a mix of historical fiction and outright fantasy for those who've lived through it, and a slightly skewed version of events for those who didn't. If you played Life is Strange, Tell Me Why, or any Telltale-esque game, you already know the drill. The controls have that familiar, slightly forklift with emotions feel, where characters move like they're wading through knee-deep memories. There's nothing really special in those particular moments. You could also say they somewhat hinge on the visuals, and Lost Records lands squarely in the same neighborhood as all its narrative cousins, and that means that art direction leans heavily on the era's color palette. We'll have to wait and see if this one hits. If you're a fan of these kind of games, Lost Records comes out on the 18th of February, like I said, for pretty much everything. Now, another game for pretty much everything, and it might be one of the single series that is pretty much for everybody, or has a title for everybody, Like a Dragon, Pirate Yakuza in Hawaii. The Yakuza series, chaos meets charm and everything else, even in the most absurd scenarios, somehow it feels like it makes sense. Randomly do a mission about a kidnapped escort, then the next dealing with a bunch of dudes in baby diapers at a second-story kink factory, and then somehow wind the day down with your pals singing karaoke, and still feels like, you know what? This could possibly happen. When I first heard about Like a Dragon, Pirate Yakuza in Hawaii, I thought two things. One, wasted potential, because it should have been called Like a Pirate Dragon in Hawaii. And also, I am for sure in. It's got pirates, Hawaii, and Majima. Here we are staring down what could be one of the most fun and just eclectic Yakuza games, and that's coming off of 2024's Game of the Year winner, Infinite Wealth. And I just say somebody's probably giving it Game of the Year, so there you go. The game kicks off with Majima waking up on the island near Hawaii without a single memory of who he is. And because it's friggin' Yakuza and this kind of game, somehow this all turns around and ends up with him turning into a friggin' pirate. And him on his ship, the Gorimuru, it becomes this lifeline as he sails between islands, looking for hidden treasures and trying to uncover his past. Mix of batshit bizarre with battle and the basics all laid out before you. And then as you continue on, more mini-games, strategy moments, and side quests than most entire quest lines in other titles. What works so well here is it all fits together. We've seen him in the past games, the eye patch, the crazy antics. He's like Johnny Depp in the Pirates of the Caribbean with all of his fingers. And here now we actually get to play those moments. The setting alone also feels like a character. Honolulu, which is first introduced in Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth, returns, and it's just such a damned amazing location. The switch to this in Infinite Wealth showed just how much Yakuza had become familiar and fun, but ultimately a bit stale. The real draw is the open seas around the islands, though. And luckily, the pirating isn't just a point A to point B or a mini game. It's a full part of the triangle of the gameplay that Like a Dragon's presenting. You got environmental hazards and your boat battles, like a child in a bathtub ramming boat toys into one another with far less accidents of brown submarines. The game has you engage in enemy ships in real-time combat, customizing the ship with weapons like energy cannons, flamethrowers, ice elemental guns, and I'm sure a lot of crazy-ass other things. Now, once you've crippled the enemy vessel, you can jump on board, which turns that fight into a full-blown deck brawl. Like Infinite Wealth before it, Pirate takes one element and seems to blow that out into its own thing. Where that game had the island and the assorted simulation of a resort, here you have pirate battles. And to me, that's actually a lot more exciting. You also have Madlantis, which is this pirate stronghold, which feels like some kind of warped through his vision, chaotic version of things that we've seen in the prior games. Combat, though, has always been a cornerstone of the Yakuza series, and Pirate Yakuza takes it to a whole new level. Majima still has his Mad Dog style, which makes you chain together wild, unpredictable moves, but now he's got Sea Dog style, which is a combat system that takes full use of the pirate persona. Imagine dual-wielding cutlasses, and then also having all kinds of flintlock pistol matches. It's stylish, it's got some excellent movement to it, and it does have that real-time combat, which I admit I'm just a slight bigger fan of. It wouldn't be a Yakuza game without a ton of side activities to distract you, though. You got karaoke, Dragon Kart racing, you have pirate theme tracks in those as well. But the standout might be a series of missions called the Love Journey, where you help out a loyal crew member recruit girls to join your cause. If you're wondering if that's what you think it is, yup, it is. Walking the plank, getting yanked, and then enemies to gank. It's all there. Pretty much pure Yakuza. What's amazing about Like a Pirate, I'm just going to call it that, is how it manages to take risks while staying true very much so to the series' heart. Are you guys Yakuza fans or not? I'd actually like to know in the comments. If you're not, it's fine. The next title is an honorable mention. It's just a short blurb, but I want to talk about Slender Threads. This comes out February 4th. This is on PC, and it's from Blights, who had some excellent point-and-click adventures in the past. Also, the prologue for this game has been available for like 3 years, but we're finally at that last bit of release. It's a point-and-click thriller that has a traveling salesman find a quiet town that has some kind of supernatural secret. H.P. Lovecraft nods notwithstanding, the prologue was incredible, and it looks just like the games I've loved in this genre, like Thimbleweed Park. There isn't a ton of data on here, but I am actually highly interested in jumping into this after seeing the prologue. Next up, Monster Hunter Wilds, February 28th. This really does feel like a combination of everything they've been doing and finally putting it all together. building that foundation out that all the predecessors have had and just saying, here is the final game. In Wilds, you get to assume the role of a custom hunter. You explore the Forbidden Lands, which is some uncharted territory that teems with all kinds of biomes and creatures to kill. The narrative takes a bit more of an immersive approach, focusing on the world's inhabitants and featuring some interactive dialogue from your character as well. The storyline revolves around an expedition searching for a lost group called the Keepers and a mysterious creature known as the White Wraith, which I am sure will probably be the easiest damn boss fight in the game. Really doesn't matter why you're there, it matters what you're doing when you are. And that is what the Monster Hunter titles have delivered in excellence for so many years. And that also means some improvements. For example, they've introduced a new bird-like bipedal wyvern that you can mount. These creatures can auto-navigate to mission points or monsters, which allows you to focus a bit more on the hunt and just exploring. Additionally, you can now carry another weapon. To me, this might be the most exciting part of the game. It's going to foster one hell of a feeling of experimentation, at least more so than the original game, as there's less friction in that testing and trying out new weapons. The better that is done, the more often it's done, the more excited I am for these kind of games, and finally seeing Wilds do that is awesome. Wilds also introduces something that's long needed, and that's something called focus mode. It allows players to target specific monster parts a bit more precisely. And in a game where you grind away a snake-like flying doohickey with a hunger for heroes and a huge amount of good guy killing moves, focus mode seems great for those who want to grind character parts. Because a lot of this game is about grinding, and the reason why? Weapons. Combat in Wilds is going to retain the 14 weapon types from the previous entries. So you got your great swords, your hammers, your dual blades, bows, and everything else. While the weapon roster seems to remain the same, many have updated new moves and actions. A significant addition, like I said, is that focus mode, but don't ignore the other parts in the game. And that includes those new special moves and slight new adjustments. Because when you jump into this, you might grab a weapon you've done before and try to pull off a move and be like, that feels weird. That's because they have actually changed a great deal when it comes to how each one of them works and moves. And you're going to need to experiment. You're going to need to mess around with different ones because it's also introducing new or returning creatures like the Kongalala, which is basically a giant pimped out pink monkey with a fat belly that stuns you by farting in your face. That has just always been one of their strengths to me. The Monster Hunter games can deliver fancy, farcical, furious, and, well, in this game, the fart heavy. The sense of humor and horror when it comes to monsters is something I've always really enjoyed. February 28th, there's a ton more to cover on this game. It is going to be a huge season for these type of titles. And honestly, Monster Hunter Wilds seems to be delivering on all cylinders. Next up, Civilization 7 on the 11th. Now, Civ 7 is coming for your in-game computer cycles. I'm actually kidding on that. It sounds like they've fixed the in-game so it doesn't take 10,000 years for a single turn. We'll just have to see. There are a few things, though, that are more fun than putting together the winning strategy of city synergies known as nations in a civilization game, and I'm actually excited for this. The world of strategy games, I think, is going to change a bit in the next coming years. We've seen it overall. With Civilization 7, we're going to have to see how the masters of turn-based are going to take a lot of the ideas that have come up between their last title and this one and merge them together. Civilization's always been one of my favorites. It's a turn-based culture builder that's just one of the few game series that has really stood the test of time to me, even if its competitors sometimes seem to age in dog years. It is a game that, no matter what, when one is released, I want to be there. Now, one of the most exciting, but I would say downright contentious and weird changes of the game is the way it handles eras or ages, with civilizations now being based in a new structure. Civilization 7 divides the gameplay now into 3 different ages. You've got your antiquity, your exploration, and your modern. Now, this hasn't caught on in prior games from other devs that have tried it, whether that's a case of execution versus elimination and people just want it done right versus never want it to be in this kind of game. We don't know. I will give them the benefit of the doubt as many other improvements and changes to the game are up my alley. The age progression system is a different game changer, though, and it's something that is going to, I think, split a lot of the gamer-verse on what they like prior or after Civ 7. As you continue to do your job as a nation leader, the age progression system counts up. As you make decisions, you expand your empire, you contribute to that metric, and once it reaches a critical point, your civilization moves to the next age, and you're faced with some kind of impactful decision that changes the shape of your future. But it also changes the civilization. You pick a new one. This system brings what a lot of people think is going to be a more dynamic flow to the gameplay, making a lot of decisions that feel like pivotal moments in history and maybe not dialing down as deep, but that'll, of course, depend on the fan that you are. For the first time, also, Civilization 7 allows you to mix and match leaders and civilizations. Leading the US with Caesar or Africa with Stalin might be in the future, but it's for sure going to create a weird, possibly awesome past. You'll also have navigatable rivers, and instead of instantly building cities in Civ 7, you have settlers building towns, which only convert their usefulness into money until they reach a particular level, and then you can buy improvements to finally turn them into cities. I'm not sure how this will work or if it'll slow down Civ 7 a lot. Civ games don't really need anything more to slow them down, but I enjoy the idea of it. I like the more nuanced approach. Another change in the approach is making diplomacy even more powerful. You can now use influence as a form of currency to engage in cooperative or competitive diplomatic actions. You can sanction other nations. You can join into military pacts. You can even buy yourself out of problems that crop up as well, basically asserting the influence you have to shortchange something bad that's getting ready to occur. The game also introduces independent powers. These are dynamic city-states that interact with all of the civilizations the players play, and they replace barbarians. Now, that may change the general feel of the early game in Civilizations, as it always felt to me like we're smarter people working together against these 50 dudes still banging doggy style and blowing on nose holes and skulls to make music. I want to see how that plays out. The idea of those independent powers could work out great, or they could also make it feel like, well, there's no real other characters in the game world. We'll just have to see. Visually, Civilization 7 also looks to aim a bit more like the prior games before 6, more realistic depictions, which is nice, as I think that prior game was considered far more cartoony than a lot of fans seem to expect or like. Overall, Civilization 7, I think, is shaping up to be a pretty big change to the Civ series. We'll just have to see if they're able to nail those. Each one has changed. There's always been that. Every single title's changed, and there's always those gamers who are like, I'm not moving to the next one. To me, I like to move to each one to see if I like them, and various different titles haven't really grabbed me. Civ 7, some of the ideas they have here do. Again, it all depends on the execution. Speaking of executions, I had to cut this off because this would have gone on for too long. There's a ton of games in February. What do you guys want? What are you looking forward to? What are you not looking forward to? Any of the games on the list excite you? Yes or no? Put it off in the comments. Also, please join the Patreon or become a YouTube member, which lets you join into the Discord anyway. It helps, and especially with what is only considered to be all kinds of crazy changes with YouTube, as somebody who doesn't do sponsors, and basically it's just me working on the channel. It always helps if you guys jump in, and I can guarantee you one thing. You're going to continue to get no BS stuff, even if we don't agree, and a really fun place to hang out. Peace out, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your week.